Lily Carter's hands trembled as she stood at the altar, her fingers tightly wrapped around a bouquet she no longer cared about. The grand wedding hall shimmered with golden lights, crystal chandeliers, and smiling faces, but none of it reached her. Her chest felt tight, her breath shallow. This was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Instead, it felt like a silent prison. Across from her stood Daniel Brooks, confident and composed, his sharp eyes fixed on her like he already owned her future. The guests watched with admiration. To them, it was a perfect union: wealth, power, beauty. But to Lily, it was a decision made for her, not by her. "Do you take?" The priest's words were suddenly cut off. The massive wooden doors at the end of the hall burst open with a loud crash. A man stumbled inside. Gasps echoed through the room. He was covered in blood. His white shirt was soaked red, his breathing uneven, his movements desperate. His eyes scanned the room wildly before locking onto Lily. For a split second, everything froze. Then chaos followed. Heavy footsteps thundered from outside. Armed men in black suits rushed in, their expressions cold, their eyes hunting. "Find him!" one of them barked. The guests panicked, whispering, shifting, but no one dared to move. The wounded man staggered forward, straight toward the altar. Before Lily could react, he reached her. His hand grabbed her wrist, firm, urgent. "Please," he whispered, his voice low and strained. "Hide me." Lily's heart slammed violently against her chest. Her mind screamed at her to step back, to call for help, to run. But she didn't. Something in his eyes stopped her. Not fear. Not weakness. Something deeper. Something dangerous. The footsteps were getting closer. She had seconds. Without thinking, Lily stepped slightly forward, her large wedding dress spreading around her like a shield. With trembling hands, she lifted the heavy layers of fabric just enough. "Stay still," she whispered. The man didn't hesitate. He slipped beneath the gown, hiding himself within the wide folds of silk and lace. Lily dropped the fabric instantly, her body going rigid. Her pulse roared in her ears. The armed men reached the front. "Did anyone see a man come this way?" one demanded, his sharp gaze scanning the room. Lily forced herself to breathe normally, to stand still, to act like nothing had happened. The man beneath her dress didn't move. She could feel his presence, his warmth, the faint, uneven rhythm of his breathing dangerously close. One wrong move, and everything would collapse. The room fell into a tense silence. And in that moment, standing at her own wedding altar, hiding a hunted stranger beneath her dress, Lily Carter realized. Her life had just changed forever. Lily Carter stood frozen at the altar, her smile forced, her heartbeat loud enough to drown out the whispers around her. Beneath the layers of her wedding dress, the stranger remained hidden, silent, still, and impossibly close. She could feel the faint pressure of his presence against her legs, his uneven breathing brushing against the fabric. And yet, there was no panic in him. No shaking. No desperation. Only a strange, controlled calm, as if even in this moment, he was not the one being hunted, but the one in control. "Continue the ceremony," one of the armed men ordered sharply, his eyes sweeping across the hall. The priest hesitated but obeyed. Lily swallowed hard. Every second felt like a ticking bomb. She needed to move. I need a moment," she said suddenly, her voice softer than usual but steady enough to not raise suspicion. "I'm not feeling well." A murmur spread across the guests. Daniel frowned, clearly annoyed, but before he could argue, Lily had already stepped back. Two of the guards exchanged glances but didn't stop her. Carefully, slowly, Lily walked down the side corridor, her dress gliding across the marble floor. Every step was calculated. Every movement controlled. She could not afford a mistake. Once she turned the corner and disappeared from sight, she quickened her pace. "Now," she whispered under her breath. She rushed into a nearby private room and shut the door quietly but firmly behind her. The silence hit instantly. Her hands trembled as she lifted the layers of her gown again. The man emerged. For the first time, Lily saw him clearly. He straightened despite his injury, his tall frame steady, his movements precise. Blood stained his shirt, but it didn't make him look weak. If anything, It made him look more dangerous. His eyes met hers. Sharp. Cold. Observing everything. Lily's breath caught. There was something about him, something powerful, almost intimidating. Even injured, he carried himself like someone who was used to control. Someone who didn't lose. "Thank you," he said quietly. His voice was low, calm, and controlled. Not a single trace of fear. "Who are you?" Lily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He didn't answer. Instead, his gaze shifted briefly toward the door, alert, calculating. "They'll search every room," she said, panic creeping into her voice now. "You can't stay here." "I know," he replied. Still calm. Still unreadable. Lily stared at him, confused and unsettled. Any normal person would be terrified. Bleeding. Desperate. But not him. "Why are they chasing you?" she pressed. A pause. Then finally, his eyes returned to hers. "You shouldn't be involved," he said simply. Not a warning. A statement. Footsteps echoed faintly in the hallway outside. Lily's heart skipped. The danger was getting closer. She should have been afraid. She was afraid. But beneath that fear, something else had begun to grow. A strange pull. A quiet curiosity. And a feeling she couldn't explain. That this man wasn't just trouble. He was something far more dangerous. The knock on the door wasn't gentle. It was sharp. Demanding. Lily's heart jumped into her throat. The stranger's expression didn't change, but his eyes hardened instantly. In one smooth movement, he stepped closer, placing himself between Lily and the door. "Open it," a voice ordered from outside. "Daniel." Lily hesitated for a second, then slowly reached for the handle and pulled the door open. Daniel Brooks stood there, no longer the polished groom. His jaw was tight, his eyes suspicious, and behind him, armed men waited. "I knew something was off," Daniel said coldly, stepping inside without permission. His gaze swept the room, and then stopped. On the man. Silence fell. For a brief second, something unexpected flashed across Daniel's face. Recognition. Then tension. "Well, this is interesting," Daniel muttered. Lily looked between them, confusion rising. "You know him?" she asked. Daniel let out a low, humorless laugh. "Know him," he said. "Everyone knows him." The room felt colder. The stranger finally spoke, his voice calm, controlled, and sharper than before. "Daniel Brooks," he said. "Still hiding behind other people's power, I see." Lily's breath caught. Daniel's expression darkened. "And you're still impossible to kill." A pause. Then Daniel turned to Lily, his voice dropping into something more dangerous. "This man," he said slowly, "is Ethan Blackwood." The name hit like a shockwave. Lily's mind spun. Ethan Blackwood. The ruthless, untouchable trillionaire CEO. A man whispered about in fear. A man who destroyed companies and people without hesitation. Her eyes slowly turned toward him. Ethan didn't deny it. Didn't react. As if his identity meant nothing. Footsteps thundered again in the hallway. More men. This time, heavier. Faster. "They're here," Daniel said, stepping back slightly. "And trust me, they're not here to talk." Before Lily could react, the door burst open. Armed men flooded the room, weapons raised. Everything exploded into chaos. Guests screamed in the distance. Footsteps echoed. Orders were shouted. But in the center of it all, Ethan stood still. Calm. Unshaken. Then, in a single second, everything shifted. "Put the guns down," Ethan said quietly. No shouting. No fear. Just authority. And strangely, the room obeyed. Even the armed men hesitated. Ethan's cold gaze swept across them, calculating, precise. "You came all this way," he continued, "just to lose." His words weren't a threat. They were a promise. Daniel's confidence faltered for the first time. Because in that moment, the hunted man was gone. And the most dangerous man in the room had just taken control. The silence after Ethan's words was heavy, thick with tension, fear, and something far more dangerous. Then everything moved at once. One of the armed men tried to step forward, raising his weapon, but he never got the chance. Within seconds, more men flooded in from behind Ethan, precise and disciplined. They moved like shadows, disarming every threat with calculated force. The balance of power flipped instantly. Lily stood frozen, watching it unfold like a scene she couldn't escape. Ethan didn't rush. He didn't panic. He simply watched and controlled everything. "End it," he said quietly. That was all it took. Within moments, the attackers were restrained, their confidence shattered. The chaos outside slowly faded into stunned silence. Then Ethan turned. Not to the enemies. To Daniel. Daniel Brooks no longer looked like the powerful groom. The confidence, the control, it was gone. In its place stood a man exposed. "You built your empire on stolen deals, illegal contracts, and fear," Ethan said, his voice cold and precise. "Did you really think it would never catch up to you?" Daniel's face paled. "You have no proof." Ethan gave a slight nod. As if on cue, one of his men stepped forward, placing a tablet on the table. "Files. Transactions. Evidence. Everything." Lily's breath caught as she realized the truth. This marriage was never about love. It was business. Control. A trap. "No," Daniel muttered, his voice breaking. "You planned this." Ethan's expression didn't change. "I finish what others try to hide." Within minutes, Daniel's world collapsed, right there in the same place he had planned to secure his future. Guests whispered. Some stepped back. Others watched in shock. The wedding was over. Not quietly, but completely. Lily stood in the center of it all, her mind racing, her heart still struggling to catch up. For the first time in a long time, she felt something different. Not fear. Freedom. Slowly, her eyes lifted to Ethan. He walked toward her, stopping just close enough, not forcing, not demanding. "You made a choice today," he said calmly. "One most people wouldn't." Lily swallowed, her voice soft. "I didn't know who you were." "That's why it mattered," he replied. A quiet pause settled between them. "No expectations," Ethan continued. "No pressure. What happens next is your decision." For the first time, no one was deciding for her. No family. No power. No fear. Just her. Lily took a slow breath, looking around at the broken illusion of her old life, before looking back at the man who had unknowingly changed everything. And in that moment, she understood. One impulsive decision had rewritten her entire destiny. She didn't just hide a hunted man. She awakened a powerful storm.